Welcome to Recross the Paths, where we celebrate the Cube community one conversation at a time. Today, I get to sit down with Anna. Welcome, Anna. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me on.
I'm so excited to chat in this context. We got to meet not too long ago at Shoebox, where I currently hold a 0% win rate against you. You have demonstrated your magical prowess. So I'm excited to explore your cube building as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on and talk about this project of mine in particular because this one is like my baby.
There's something funny about that, right? You can get into so many different cubes or so many different projects that you're working on, and there's always the one that is special to you.
Yeah, the first is the best. Well, I guess it technically wasn't my first, but the one that I've spent the most time working on for sure.
Well, to help set the stage, Anna, why cube?
I think I have to go back to when I first started playing Magic. I first started playing Magic in 2014, and basically throughout the entire time I've been playing Magic, I've been playing some form of limited. So I remember my first pre-release, Khans of Tarkir.
Yeah,
Yeah, love that format. Just immediately fell in love with limited.
where everybody starts at 22 life with a morph in play.
Oh yeah. Plus you like learn all the little tricks where it's like, all the morphs under 5 mana will trade or they get eaten by each other. Then after is where you have to worry about. Yeah, it was just a sick format. Also love multicolor soup piles.
The perfect home for that, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think what really brought me into just limited in general is I love the idea of that every single time you sit down, you're building a slightly different deck. And sure, in like different limited formats, let's say you're in a guild format like cons, right? There's a Jeskai deck, there's a Sultai deck, there's a Teamer deck, right? But every time you build those, they're a little bit different. You get different uncommons, you get different rares, you try to build around them, your curve looks different, your mana bases look different. Not to say I don't like Constructed at all. I think what I do like about Constructed is that you have, in my mind, a lot of keystone cards that you are building your whole deck constructions around, right? So,
Yeah.
you'll have your control deck, it has a control finisher, you fill out the rest of it with card advantage, things that go 1 for 1, board wipes, etc. Your aggro deck, where you have your I feel like every time I've played an aggro deck, you have the cards you really want to see on turns 1, 2, and 3. Mid-range deck is just going to be, what are the best cards in the format, and just put them all together, make the mana work. There's something about playing powerful cards that I do like, and I feel like Cube is just a perfect marriage of those two concepts where you get the limited experience of you get to just build your deck every single time and then you get constructed power level cards that, maybe in a retail limited environment are kind of a pipe dream, but when you put them in a cube and you're seeing, I mean, you can see multiples of them or different variants of them, they really get to shine in a different light.
I appreciate how you described, kind of the goals of different constructed decks. Did you play much constructed in that part of the journey?
I have played just bits and pieces of Legacy, Modern, Standard. Right now, my main constructed format is Pauper. I really,
Nice.
really like Pauper. Pauper is in a really good state right now compared to, I think, like most other formats. And the thing that I also really like about Pauper right now is that it's like Brewer's Paradise.
Sure.
Lots of different viable decks.
Yeah, so many of the recent banning decisions have cut out some of the most oppressive pieces. So, like, you can play some off the wall stuff and not feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So then in playing limited coming up from the cons era forward, where did cube intersect with that for you?
I think the first cube I had ever played was I just walked into an LGS that like I hadn't really been to before. I spent a summer in Pittsburgh. I drafted there a couple of nights, and then one day after a draft, someone was like, "Do you want to try a cube?" And I was like, "What's cube?" And they said, "Well, a cube is a limited format, except instead of opening packs, we have the cards set out, and you just draft the cards." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." And I remember it being very much like this is someone's collection of cards. These are cards that they personally enjoy and they put them all together. And now I'm like building a deck out of it. And I don't remember what deck I built. It was probably pretty bad because this was like in 2016. Like at that point, I was still very new to Limited, but I liked it. It was a lot of fun. I started playing Commander more so when I was in college. I built a Commander cube where, you draft all your legends and then you'd like fill out the deck with everything that went with the legends, and there was like a mana based pack, and I feel like that was a really fun way to get my friends to like try different decks and like see a bunch of legends being played that wouldn't normally get played because they're just not very good.
Yeah, like limited is kind of the mother of necessity on that, right? Like you will have to play with this because this is what is available.
Yeah, and I really like that you can kind of create an environment around certain cards that normally wouldn't be very playable and just make them good. Just make them good somehow.
So was the Commander Cube your first project?
I think the Commander Cube was the first. I made a powered artifact cube after that, and I didn't really like it that much, so I took it apart. And then in 2024-ish, I believe, I mean, really, the idea came about. I play Power Cube and like Vintage Cube on and off. It'll be up for, a week or two or so, and I'll get my games in, and then I'll not play it. I won't do like the table draft like single elim. But really, the idea of the cube came about because I just like turn one Minskin boot, and then just my opponent conceded, and then they conceded the match, and I was like, well, that's like not very fun. Like,
Yeah, like I showed you 3 cards. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of fun for me to go, haha, Black Lotus, land Minskimbu, now you're dead unless you have exactly Caracas in hand. Like it's kind of fun to do that sometimes, but at the same time, I kind of get the frustration because I've been on the other side of that kind of like, haha, turn one land, Mock Sapphire, Flash, World Spine Worm, 15 power, you're dead. And it's like, well, it doesn't really feel
Yeah.
like a game. So that's like the aspect I don't like about Power Cube is that sometimes you just completely get your opponent, they can't do anything, and there's nothing that they could have drawn to. None of their decisions matter, nothing they could have drawn that would have made the game different. But I like a lot of those cards, right? Like, I like playing Reanimator, I like playing Sneak Attack, I like playing Flash, I like playing Tinker.
But there's a through line of some fast mana and some uninteractable board states there.
Yeah, I think games are at the best when your decisions matter and there's some give and take. So yeah, it's like I had that experience, and then I think I pitched to one of my friends, like, okay, hear me out. We take a cube and we take all the cards that used to be good in Vintage Cube, and the whole cube is just those. And first reaction was, that sounds like a terrible idea. No one's gonna want to play that. Everyone wants to play with the new cards from Modern Horizons. Their Psychic Frog, their Tameo, the Ragavan, Solitude, and whatnot. And I was like, okay, but let me just put the list together and maybe you'll see differently. So me and a bunch of my friends, we sat in a Discord call one day, and they were just shouting cards at me like Flicker Wisp, you got to put in Thoughtseize, you got to put in Swords to Plowshares, and then that's kind of your core, and then it's like, well, okay, what cards are we like building around? It's like, okay, let's do Smokestack, Winter Orb, Mindslaver, things that used to be good in Vintage Cube, and then they're no longer good enough anymore. So now they've retired, and this is a retirement home for all the cards that used to be good in Vintage Cube but are no longer really holding up.
Now we get to talk about the Vintage Cube retirement home, which, as I understand, is not what anybody calls it, right?
Yeah, really, the first name for it was the Boomer Cube because really it's like, that's a boomer card. You're shaking your fist at the sky and you're saying, back in my day, we cast Thragtusk on turn 4 and that was good enough. And then I added cards that apparently weren't boomer enough. Like, okay, apparently Smuggler's Copter is not a boomer card. I disagree. That card was printed in like 2017 or something like that. That was like almost a decade ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And banned at the time, too.
Okay, that's true. But it's also like 9 years old, which makes it a pretty boomer card if you ask me personally. But and so it just became the Vintage Cube retirement home because, yeah, it's where all the old Vintage Cube cards come to retire.
Anna, how would you give the elevator pitch or the overview for this cube, the Boomer Cube, if you will?
Really simply, I would say just think mid 2010s vintage, legacy, and modern, just all those like eternal formats. There aren't really any cards past Guilds of Ravnica, so really anything pre-Fire design. There's no War of the Spark, there's no T3 Fairy, there's no like Throne of Eldraine, Embercleave. That's kind of where we start to see this like burst of power and complexity creep,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. It kind of play design hits around Ixalan and Dominaria there.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really trying to emulate any particular environment. Like, it's not mid 2010s Legacy, it's not mid 2010s Vintage. If anything, it's probably more, the iterations of Vintage Cube that were around during that time, but then again, it's also unpowered, so it also has this other kind of like weird, distinct feel to it.
Yeah, so do you think of it like a time capsule, sort of, or is it something different than that?
I think on paper it is a nostalgia cube, because I think the way we add cards to it is really like, oh, do you remember playing this in this standard format in 2016? Or do you remember when this card was, an all-star in D&T and Legacy in 2014? This card was in everyone's sideboards, stuff like that. But at the same time, I do feel like I'm just kind of designing this limited environment as what I think my perfect limited format is.
Mm. It is funny. I think each of the times you've described the building process, it does sound like the sort of thing that you could do in a rocking chair on a porch. Here's a thing that we enjoyed back then.
Yeah, like there's like a South Park episode like member berries, and it's like, no, member Necrotol, member Corsair of Crufix, or member Flame Tongue Kavu. Remember that when that was like the premier red 4-drop?
It still can be. It still can be.
Can be here in the retirement home.
There you go. So how has this project evolved over time? Or like did it kind of start close to its current iteration?
I have not changed a tremendous number of cards. There have been some packages that have come in and out. I know the initial iteration had Pick-a-Lock, and it was pretty bad, and it really never came together. This is a 540, so two card combos can be a little bit tough to come together. I've had Dark Depths come in, took it out, didn't really like it. Pod was in the cube at the beginning. I recently made quite a few changes, and one of those was very, very sadly taking Birthing Pod out because
Hmm.
it was mostly just really bad.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we found Pod to be like pretty much unplayable. Even taking it early in a draft and trying to draft your deck to be a Pod deck, the restriction of like needing to have the Pod curve was just so heavy, and like you would like draw a combo piece. Like it was like not good. And it's really sad too because the Pod is one of the first altars that I did, and I've
Hmm.
had it for like a decade at this point.
An altar you did yourself?
Yeah,
Very cool.
it's just like a pretty simple border extension, but still, it's like really sad to take the card out because where else am I going to play Birthing Pod?
Right. And you don't have a retirement home from the retirement home?
No, 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 it just gets put up in the binder with all the other lost cards that don't really have a home. But in its place, I did add a couple more like green unfair things like Oath of Druids and Food Chain.
Sure.
Food Chain, which hasn't actually been in Vintage Cube as far as I know. I think Food Chain on paper looks a little bit better because the fail case of Food Chain is just you cast your big idiots, even if you're not doing like the Food Chain loop with Squee the Immortal and Eternal Scourge. It might also just be bad too, but in my mind, it's like, well, Pod was really bad, so you
So
can own the floor. The bar's on the ground.
it can't be worse than. Yeah.
The Food Chain that I got is like the Nostalgia VHS version 2, the
Oh,
Secret Lair.
nice. Yeah.
So I thought it was funny.
That's really good. Well, so you're mentioning things like the food chain, like birthing pod. How are you thinking about power level here? Because this is a non-powered powered cube, basically.
So I think people often describe cube design as being okay. You have kind of the archetype design where you have different packages of cards that center around certain cards, and then you have two color or three color archetypes. This is solidly in these are the cards that you want to build around, so build those decks. There's not really any signpost multicolor cards, they just are what they are. The power level is really centered around the key build around cards from Vintage Cube of now and of old. So really, sneak attack would be like the first one that comes to mind. You want an environment where sneak attack feels solid and good. And white, a particular like parallax wave. We want an environment where parallax wave feels very good. Blue, opposition, parallax tide, upheaval, tinker, flash. We want these cards to feel good, but not like oppressively good. Black has like a few reanimator things. It's not the fastest reanimator deck, and it's a little bit more fair. There's no instance reanimator, so no like corpse dance Emrakul. There's not even an entomb. I haven't really found it to be necessary, and it also just keeps reanimator deck from having those really, really unfair starts.
Yeah, and this is so interesting because like all of those cards that you've described occupy this space in design of like, hey, these are very powerful cards that tend to lead to very powerful decks, but like not in the way you would expect here.
Yeah, they're very powerful enablers. They do need a payoff. You can't just stick a sneak attack in a deck and just expect it to be good. I think you can like value Kikijiki or value Twin, but it's just going to be okay. Really, you want to see like the Pestermite or the Restoration Angel or something like that to make it really, really tick. Green, if you have a Survival of the Fittest, you would love to see an Eldrazi Titan to like reshuffle your graveyard and again just make it so that you can just kind of go through your library, tutor for whatever creature you need. You can make it work without that, but you really want these like packages of cards to just feel really, really good together.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've really carefully eschewed some of the most dire payoffs too. Like you said, no Emrakul, certainly none of the newer reanimation targets. Like we're still on Grizzlebrand, which is a nice throwback.
Yeah, that was one area where I was really struggling was black reanimation targets. Gristlebrand is really like the best one,
It is.
and nothing else really comes close. I mean, there's Shouldered Whispering one, which is pretty clunky.
The Scourge of 2013 Commander.
Yeah, there's Grave Titan, and Grave Titan is kind of nice because you can ramp out into it. There's signets and mana rocks, and they're very good. So you can play a Grave Titan reasonably, but you can also reanimate it, get it out early, and it's just a phenomenal card. White has a few items like Angel of Serenity and Eleshnorn. There's no Iona. I'm kind of on the fence about including that. I want the monocolor decks to be good as just kind of like a baseline, someone sits down, grasses for the first time. I want to be able to tell them, hey, you can take a bunch of white cards on curve and your deck will be fine. Or red cards on curve and your deck will be fine. And Iona just shuts people down so hard.
Truly, yeah, it is one of those like, oh, did you choose the monocolor lane? Well, then you're gonna have a bad time here.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things I think that makes so many of those powerful archetypes that people expect in a lot of vintage cubes tick is the fast mana that you talked about not including, and a big part of that is power. Could you talk about not including power here?
The only reason why there's no power in here is that I don't really like playing with power all that much. I think it makes games really swingy. And I really wanted to play the Vintage Cube Chaos, but I wanted the game to feel more like, again, like 2010's Legacy. I don't really want you to just Black Lotus out a Haymaker or
Mm.
just like, Ancestral and now it feels like the game is over. Even the unfair decks I want to feel a little bit more fair so that even if you're just playing like a mid-range deck without any power, you still feel like you're in the game at all points in the game. Also, power is very expensive, and I wanted to have this in paper.
Yeah, that is a pretty big hurdle to entry for sure. Well, I noticed in the spirit of fast mana, like you don't include something like Dark Ritual, but you do have a couple of red rituals. Is that to help encourage a storm direction?
That was another one that I had in here to begin with was like High Tide Storm, and I very quickly took it out. I had Brain Freeze in here,
Mm-hmm.
and I really did not like the types of games that it created, where if the blue deck just stalls until the late game, Brain Freeze just ends the game. It doesn't matter what they do, like, what is white supposed to do against a Brain Freeze, like a white-green deck? Like, really nothing. So I don't really love the types of games that spell-based Storm creates. I think that there's enough on the combo side that you can play a combo deck and it feels fine. I do feel like the best combo decks have been the ones that are in like a mid-range or a control shell. So you can play Kiki Jiki, but it'll be like big red Kiki Jiki where you're playing this big red mid-range deck and you have Kiki Jiki, Zealous Conscripts that just happen to be in your deck, and sometimes you'll get them off. Or you can do a Reanimator deck, but it's like a mid-range Reanimator shell where you're playing like blue, black, red mid-range with a flash package or something like that, and it's just in this shell where you're still playing a pretty fair game plan, but occasionally you're kind of trading your card advantage for a little bit more board presence or a little bit more oomph.
Hmm. I will say there's something appealing about using Kiki Jiki for, if you'll allow, like ethical means. Like I just want a double glory bringer or something.
Ethical Kiki Jiki, ethical twin,
Yeah, right, right.
cruelty-free Kiki Jiki.
There you go.
So why there's no like Dark Rit is specifically because I really don't like the play pattern of turn one Dark Rit Liliana, and that is almost the entire reason why I don't have that in here. Because someone's gonna get it, and eventually someone's gonna go, okay, turn one Dark Rit Liliana, and then the other person's gonna have a really really bad time because yeah, there's basically nothing in the cube that can really beat that, save for like 3 mana O-Ring or 3 mana Hero's Downfall, and that's basically it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that like even that level of play is going to feel so much like the Minsk and Boo play that you outlined, just from a different era.
Yeah, I mean, those types of plays and cards still exist in the older card sphere, but trimming down on what those are and what those look like just to, Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, that's fine. We can power out a Porcelain Legionnaire on one, and that's not too bad. Most decks
Sure.
can handle that.
You hope so.
I would hope so, or else something went really, really wrong. But yeah, especially planeswalkers, I feel like are just so tricky because there's like no planeswalker removal really until you get to the modern era, and then it's everywhere. But again, trying to go for more of a old school feel.
I mean, you noted when you started was about the time that I started playing as well. And so I remember when Hero's Downfall was the biggest and baddest thing because it could hit planeswalkers.
I remember when Hero's Downfall was a rare.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that you mentioned the Oblivion Ring. There's something cool that you did. It sounds like by way of accessibility to try to even out how some cards play. Could you speak to kind of the homogenization of some of the effects like Oblivion Ring?
Yeah, so for the folks who aren't aware, Oblivion Ring and Banishing Light, it's 3 mana enchantment, exile a thing your opponent controls. Okay. They have different templating. So Oblivion Ring has it as 2 triggers, and Banishing Light, it's all attached to one. So what you can do with an Oblivion Ring, and really any effect that's templated like Oblivion Ring, it doesn't have to be the exile thing. It can be Mesmeric Fiend that you thought sees them, or versus Kiteself Freebooter or Brain Maggot, is that you remove the O-Ring somehow. You can disenchant it, you can capsize it back to your hand. It doesn't matter, but if you remove it with the trigger on the stack where you're going to exile something, you can bring it back or destroy it, and the thing is gone forever, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
So if you have, for example, capsize, buy back, bounce a thing back to your hand, you can cast Oblivion Ring, exile a thing, capsize it back. Their thing is exiled forever, and now you still have your Oblivion Ring and capsize in your hand. There's a few other spots where you can do that. So Tide Hollow Sculler, it's a Thoughtseize
Yes.
effect, but again, it's 2 triggers. There's a Crystal Shard in the cube, so this has happened to me before, where my opponent goes Tide Hollow Sculler, trigger on the stack, bounce it back to my hand. Tide Hollow Sculler, bounce it back, and you just like do that over and over again. And everything that has that kind of thing is templated the same way. So if the question ever comes up, can I do the thing with this thing? The answer is 100% of the time, yes, you can do the thing with the thing. It is always the old templating. You can always do the thing that feels like cheating.
So is this a decision for the nostalgic feel here, or was it just like for those lines of play?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's also like a neat like way of teaching people about this specific templating and the history of it. I just like it like brings me back to like watching, I think it was like LSV crash Moto with like 2 Oblivion Rings, so they like see each other, and then it like bugs out the engine because it's like the only 2 things they can exile. Like yeah, just like weird stuff like that. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it feels very tactile, right? It's like This card does these two things, and you can have another card that interacts with these two different triggers, and it makes something that's like more than the sum of its two parts.
Yeah, like it has a lot of rough edges to hold on to. It's not incredibly linear or clean in how it works. It has enough hooks that you can do something interesting with it.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things you described in your overview was that you have, quote, copious amounts of mana disruption.
Oh, yeah.
So, how do you think about that here?
There's a lot of mana disruption and mana destruction. Every color has access to some type of prison element. White, Armageddon, destroy all your lands,
Yes.
balance, even everything out. Blue, upheaval is a big one. Going back to the trigger thing, you have Parallax Tide, where you activate Parallax Tide and do 5 strip mines by Parallax Tiding them and like putting it back into your hand or disenchanting it. Black has maybe a little bit fewer. It has Sinkhole. There's a few ways you can just kind of recur creatures over and over again. So like recurring Nightmare plus something that'll blow up a land. Red has Wildfire, burning a Jinya. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Wildfire. Blow up 4 lands for each player. Deal 4 to each creature. Pretty good.
And you've doubled up on that effect too.
Oh yeah. If your Wildfire deck wants Wildfire and it wants Burning. And then green, of course, has your classic Crucible, Raminep Excavator, Strip Mine Lock. You can also do things with Acidic Slime, because it just blow up your land. There's Plow Under for like big green decks where you
I was
take
going to
2 of
mention
their
Plow
lands and
Under.
then, oh yeah, and then put 2 of them on top.
That card reads as so innocuous until the first time you're on the receiving end of it and you go, oh, that's why. That's why that costs so much.
Oh yeah, it feels like double Time Walk. I mean, that card is just gas when you're actually able to like do the thing, and especially when it's under when you would normally curve it out. One of the main differences between modern threats and old threats is that modern threats are really, really efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ragavan, Psychic Frog, Johnny, Tammy, like they all cost like 1 to 2, maybe 3 mana. Barrow-goyf, Broadside Bombardiers, they're like 1, 2, 3 mana for these really powerful effects.
Like must answer game ending type threats. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In the context of the modern vintage cube, I think mana disruption is not particularly good because a lot of these threats are so cheap. Mana disruption basically will sometimes just do nothing to your opponent's deck, whereas in this environment where the haymakers are 3, 4, 5 mana, being able to keep someone off double white, double blue, or triple blue for like Cryptic Command, black pips, and mana acceleration off of City of Traders and Ancient Tomb, that can really give you an edge that kind of accumulates turn after turn. There's also the sweepers too, like Armageddon, where, you have to play the board in order to avoid the Armageddon. So that also just has its own category, like upheaval. You have to like interact and play the board and figure out what your opponent is trying to do in order to play around these big effects that in this environment I think are very, very powerful. In modern vintage cube environment, not very strong at all. I don't know if Armageddon's like how long it's been since Armageddon's been in, or if it's even would be playable, but probably not.
Yeah, it is funny that like that's almost not the kind of card that would be designed nowadays. So it's like nothing plays around that in any meaningful way. The closest
Oh
we got was like
no.
Fall of the Thran back in Dominaria.
Yeah, like they don't print them anymore. I think also because they print a lot of cards for Commander, and in Commander land, disruption, mana denial is very, very taboo.
Whew, yeah. And it will slow down an already slow game.
But in a 1v1 environment, it's really not that bad. I think that mana denial, when it's deliberate, creates a lot of interesting games, right? Where it's like, if your opponent is Rashad importing the wrong land, it feels like they're not doing anything to you at all.
Mm,
When
yeah.
they're porting the correct land and they know what land to port, like every turn of the game, that's when it feels like really, really brutal. And I think that that decision in and of itself of like what land do you port and like what lands do you show your opponent when you go to fetch for the first time, are you showing your opponent your dual land, or are you just grabbing a basic because you think they might have like a wasteland or something? That's the type of gameplay you would see in like Legacy that I think just hasn't been a thing for a while. I mean, Wasteland is still a very good card in Legacy, don't get me wrong, but in the context of Cube and Vintage Cube, I think that kind of interaction has like really, really fallen off.
Yeah.
And I think it also just creates these like really low resource games too, where every little decision matters. What you show your opponent matters. What you fetch matters.
Do those sorts of things go hand in hand with that idea that you were talking about with the Oblivion Ring type effects, where it's like this is kind of a teaching tool in a way, or like this is educational about a season of the game?
I think so. I think it creates an interesting conversation after the fact where it's like, you're done with your match, your opponent was porting the wrong land, and you show your opponent your hand and you go, if you had ported this land instead of this land, if you've kept me off of double white instead of double blue,
Mm.
like my hand would have been terrible. And really, keeping me off double blue didn't matter because the counter spells didn't matter, but the Wrath did. A lot of the Haymaker cards require a ton of like excess mana of a particular pip. So, sneak attack red. If you keep your opponent off red mana and they're a sneak attack deck, how does the game look versus if you're taking their like splash color?
Mm.
Knowing your opponent's game plan, I think, is like pretty important here. And not just your opponent's game plan, but exactly what cards are they playing that you care about. Creature decks caring about wrath effects or opposition, just opposition.
Yeah, just opposition. Yeah.
Yeah, you should probably care about opposition.
So do the players in your play group, has this been something that's resonated for them? Like, I mean, it sounds like a lot of folks were really interested in helping you put this together. Like, is this a play pattern they're excited about too?
Oh, some yes, some no. So I think that mana denial being good leads to mono colored decks being very good. So mono red, mono white, mono green. I think those are like three very, very, very good decks that, again, if I had someone brand new sitting down and they said, what do I draft? I would probably just tell them draft red, green, or white cards and just pick a color, all the cards of that color, curve out, you'll be fine. It might not be the most functional deck in the world, sure, but you could probably put together something that's okay, and I like having that as a baseline. And then if you want to take some of these build arounds, if you know how to build around opposition, if you know how to build around Parallax Wave or Tide or Recurring Nightmare, and you have that extra level of, okay, this is a really cool card. I've played with this card before. I want to build this deck.
Mm.
The other aspect of the enabler cards, really, not even so much the payoffs, are really strong, and the interaction at this point in the game wasn't really, really efficient.
Yeah, like a couple standouts, but most of them were not that.
Yeah, that's been kind of hard to resolve because I want cards like Sneak Attack and Recurring Nightmare to feel good to play because that's that era, right?
Hmm.
I want these cards that used to be good in Vintage Cube to shine now. But if you add in modern interaction, I feel like that kind of takes away the charm. And then I guess there's also a question of, well, what about other older interaction cards that have been in Vintage Cube prior? And honestly, there aren't really a lot more. I think I have most of the heavy hitters already in there. I can add in like naturalize. So we have like Crossing Grip and naturalize, but it's just kind of a redundant effect.
But Cross and Grip matters a lot. That's really actually a great example there, where Cross and Grip matters a lot in this era. Where if you put Cross and Grip in the 2020s, like it would get left in sideboards.
Oh yeah, it'd be terrible. Crossing Grip's pretty good here though. Again, things going back to like Parallax Tide or Parallax Wave or Crystal Shard, being able to interact with those when your opponent's trying to do something and
Yeah.
you'd be getting priority. It's just like very, very good. But it's not to say that there's no room for any kind of, change on that level. There are a few modern cards in here. I have both Hierarchs, Ignoble and Noble. I have Goblin Engineer. I've just been kind of adding a few cards that kind of have a boomer feel, but aren't overly powerful, aren't overly complicated to maybe just like fill out the curve a little bit or just be like a decent role player across multiple decks and just kind of bridge some gaps.
Are there particular types of cards in that vein that you're looking for, or is it just kind of as you see needs, maybe digging into the more recent cards?
There's nothing really on the wish list, but I'll know it when I see it. Modern Horizons, has Funny it is because I feel like Modern Horizons where we see a lot of these like really messed up broken card designs. If you take maybe the bottom half of the rares and you just look at them and they were maybe okay to bad in their limited environment, but they're still playable cards for the most part. Again, like I probably don't think you'd play Goblin Engineer in Modern Horizons 2 Limited, but it's a pretty good, like, and really cool build around card. It does something a little bit different than the Goblin Welder, and it also has an entomb effect stapled to it, so you can play it in your reanimator deck and basically just entomb a mere battlesphere if you want to.
That's right. That it can't get back, but then you have to like find another way to make that work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just all in one package, but it just kind of is like a side grade.
There's one element that I wanted to ask about too. You mentioned that your players are reticent to use tokens that you that you would want them to use.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I have to like give a major apology to anyone who played this at CubeCon 2025. I am so sorry. Before I left my house for my flight, I left my entire box of tokens on my desk.
Oh no.
I realized it when I was checking the deck and I was like, oh no, all my tokens are all gone. And I felt bad, even worse throughout the course of the event because every cube had just like all the tokens. Like I think one person had little envelopes with the names of all the cards, and it was just so meticulous. I was like, I didn't do this. I'm so sorry for all these people who have to like flip over the backside of cards and pretend they're Wormcoil Engine tokens, which is like the worst feeling, but I promise this time if we get in, we're bringing the tokens. It'll be the first thing packed before the cube. If I don't have the cube, I'll have the tokens for the cube.
That's funny. So did you like determine to simplify tokens as part of the design here? Or was like I remember that coming across in your overview.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I put it in the overview and then I thought about it a little bit more and then realized, wait, I think I actually have a ton of unique tokens now that I think about it. Like Wormcoil Engine tokens, like those are
Yeah.
unique tokens. Mirror Battlesphere is the only thing that makes 1/1 mirror tokens. So it's kind of on the fence. I actually had to take out all the like the eternalized cards because again, it's just very specific token. If you don't have the token, it's kind of hard to represent because it's a card. It's a 4/4 with a bunch of text. You can't put the
Mm-hmm.
creature on the grave in the graveyard into the battlefield. I had the Phoenix from Ixalan at one point. It's like
Oh,
a
rekindling Phoenix. Yeah.
yes, Rekindling Phoenix, but it makes a feather, and it's like, well, I
That's
can't really
right.
remember what this feather does, so I don't really like it. Flip cards, that's been kind of a point of contention. Right now, there's only one flip card. It's Huntmaster of the Fells, and it's just in there because it is so quintessentially Jund and so classic that it's gotta be in there.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, it's amazing. I used to have Delver in here. I took it out because it was bad. I think Huntmaster will probably be the only flip card. I used to also have Search for Azcanta, but something about flipping the card just didn't feel very boomer to me.
Yeah. Well, I certainly didn't mean to call you out about something in the overview either. Like, I just know a lot of people have fussed with how to engage with tokens, especially in like complex environments like vintage cubes tend to be. So I was more just seeing how you engage with that rather than trying to to call out any error.
Yeah, we started implementing this rule where if you would make a token and you don't have the token there and there's a token in the token box, you take 5 damage. So that helps. Just make it so your opponents lose, and then they'll play with the tokens.
So oh yeah, you want to play Lingering Souls, huh? Well, you gotta show you gotta show us those spirits.
I know that this is not like the first nostalgia cube, the first cube that is just, oh, this is cards from Modern in the mid 2010s or Legacy in the mid 2010s, but this one has just been kind of like a environment that I feel like I kind of crafted to be something that I really enjoy playing personally, and it just so happens that a lot of people like playing Magic the way I like playing Magic, and that makes me happy.
Absolutely. Anna, as you think on this project on the Boomer Cube, what lessons or principles have you encountered working on this project that you've applied to your other projects?
I would say the number one thing is having a through line, having a thesis, having some kind of I don't know if problem is really the right word, but yeah, having like a mission statement of like what you're trying to do and have like a really clear idea of how you're trying to do it. So, when I'm making cuts and I'm adding cards, every time I make a change, I'm thinking, okay, is this in the spirit of the cube? Does it serve this purpose of making this environment what it is? Or am I just putting in the card because I like it? In other cube projects I've worked on, I always start with this is what the cube is, this is what we're trying to do, here's the framework, these are the boundaries, and then I just stick the cards in the boundaries, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad, but they're usually fun.
You learn something along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have advice that you would want to make sure to share with other designers?
It's funny because like I've only like really just started interacting with people in the Cube community or like listening to Cube podcasts. Like, before this year, I really hadn't done any of that at all. And I feel like I have a lot of my opinions kind of go against the grain.
That's good. That's good and important. I want to say that,
Oh,
Anna.
I always like look at balanced gameplay as being one very important aspect to gameplay that I like and cubes that I like. So I feel like again it's kind of against the grain because I've also heard some people say don't worry about balance, just play it a bunch of times and you'll figure it out eventually. But I don't know. I don't know if balance is something that you can like really intuitively grasp unless you play just a lot. Like you really have a really in-depth knowledge of every card ever printed. It's kind of tough. It's pretty common that I go up to a friend and say, "Hey, how do you think this card would fit in the cube?" And they go, "Yay or nay. No, it's too weak," or "Yes, it's too strong." Then I'll take it to a different person and they give their vote. And I always try to get a few different opinions on what the feel of a card is. And if a lot of people say it's too strong, yeah, it's just coming right straight out. If a bunch of people say it's too weak, that's coming out too. As much as I'm trying to design for the type of gameplay that I like, I also acknowledge that I'm not perfect. My card analysis is not perfect. So ask for advice, talk to your friends. If they don't like a card, there might actually be a good reason why.
There might be.
Might be. Or they lost to it.
That's right. That's right. Well, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through the Boomer Cube here. Before I let you go, though, I do want to ask one of my favorite questions as we wrap up, which is if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would you pick and who would you have do the illustration?
Okay, so I can pick any card. I get this promo. It doesn't have to be one that's already printed, right?
Well, my favorite part of this question is that I think most people just interpret it however they want to. So my initial thought was mostly like, what card do you enjoy, or like, would you want to have an alternate art printing, or would you want to have a special printing of?
Okay, I want Hatsune Miku Gaia's Cradle.
That's so good.
It's the perfect combination of horribly gaudy and please reprint Gaia's Cradle. It's on the reserve list. It really shouldn't be like like a grand for
Oh,
one card? That's ridiculous.
it's staggering.
How about while we're at it, Demon Slayer Underground Sea promo, full art. Just make it so. Secret Lair, Chainsaw Man, Sonic the Hedgehog on the Scrubland. I don't care. Just reprint them into the ground. Give the people reserve list cards with SpongeBob on them.
Well, there you go. So then the premium versions of Gaia's Cradle you'd have at your request are the Judge promo from way back in the day and the Hatsune Miku version for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Outstanding.
I don't need to pay 10 grand for a Judge promo Gaia's Cradle. I'm gonna pay way less for Hatsune Miku Gaia's Cradle, made just for me.
That's so good. Well, Anna, again, thank you so much. This has been a whole lot of fun. If folks want to learn more about the Vintage Retirement Cube, maybe explore some of your other projects, or just get in touch, where should we point them?
I am Squidly Inks on Discord. I am also Squidly Inks on Cube Cobra. And I have too many cubes. They're not all in paper. Sometimes I just get up and look at Scryfall and I type in names of cards and they appear magically in my cube cobra. I don't know how.
Well, you're in good company with all that.
Sweet.
Well, Anna, again, thank you for your time and for your passion on this project. This has really been a treat for me. Here's hoping there are more chances to play Magic in the future, and maybe someday I'll beat you at a game. We'll see.
We'll see. Thank you.